Hi there, my name is Courtney Kurtz. I am a second grade teacher, and I have implemented all three of my lesson plans that I have written for this class. I tutor after school to a second grader and a third grader that go to my school. They are in the ESOL program still currently. My favorite lesson is the one that I'm going to explain today. So the goals and the objectives of the lesson plan are that ideally students will conduct a research project on a chosen animal that lives in Georgia. So a second grade standard that I know I taught the third grader last year, and I know that the second grader has already been taught, is that we learn about the different regions of Georgia and the animals that live in those regions. So for this project, we reintroduced, or not really introduced, but retaught and discussed those animals that live in Georgia. And then they got to pick one and become an expert on them. By the end, they will create a model of that animal and that animal in its natural habitat using a shoebox. They should also be able to communicate facts about that animal and give a presentation to either me, their sibling, or their parent, whoever that they want to show their project to. This goes along with social studies and science for second grade. So in science in second grade, we learn about life cycles and different attributes of animals and what classifies a mammal as a mammal, a reptile as a reptile, etc. And it also goes along with learning the different habitats. We learn when we grow our butterflies, we discuss where butterflies live. We've also, in social studies, learned about the different habitats in Georgia and what animals live there, so it ties the two standards together. In terms of the skills area addressed for my ESOL students, I focused on reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So for reading, the students were to research the animal using a couple of different sources. So the main one was called PebbleGo, and their animal was on there, and they read through the different facts, and they completed a facts worksheet that discussed what the animal looked like, describing the habitat, the life cycle of the animal, the body of the animal, fun facts about the animal, and what the animal eats. And on this sheet, it was all organized so that they knew exactly where to put the information. And so that went away. That went with the reading aspect that they had to research it. PebbleGo also did not provide all of the answers to the questions that they had to answer. So they also had to Google search, and they had to pull up other sources that they had to read, and they were able to do that perfectly, which was awesome. In terms of writing, they had to write the facts, and then they were given another kind of substitute. Instead of writing a full-out research project right after that, they went into a sheet of paper that had sentence starters on it. So my animal eats, and they finish the sentence. My animal lives, they finish the sentence. Three fun facts about my animals, and then they finish the sentences. So from there, it was kind of another scaffold. So they went from the fact sheet to the sentence starter sheet to completing a full out essay about their animal, which was all informational until the very last sentence. Their closing idea was why they chose the animal. So the writing, they had to focus on writing informational, so that is very factually. They can't add in their own opinions. And they also had to work on rephrasing facts. So I didn't let them just copy off PebbleGo or the research sites. They had to tell me the fact that they wanted to write and change the wording so that it was in their own words, so we weren't plagiarizing. In addition, they had to focus on the habitat is versus if it had more than one habitat. So, for example, one student chose to do dolphins, and their only habitat is the ocean. So she had to write their habitat is, whereas my other student chose river otters, and it had multiple habitats like marshes, rivers, etc., lakes. And so he had to know to write their habitats are, and that was a heavy discussion that we had to make sure that we were grammatically correct. At the end, they gave a final presentation listing all of their facts to me and their other classmates, so their sibling. So that's where the speaking came in. We practiced using our perfectly written essays. So their accent was a little different than what they wrote, because what they wrote was very grammatically correct and perfect English and spelled perfectly, just with the extra editing that we had and conversations that we had. Listening wise, they listened to each other and filled out a bubble map about the animal that they did not research. So when the one presenting about the dolphins presented, the other student had a bubble map. In the middle of the bubble, it said dolphins, and he had to write facts that he learned about dolphins from the presentation. They really enjoyed that. It really kept them listening and engaged so that they could fill out their bubble map. This can go for second and third graders, because that's what I used. The materials being used: you need the research report note sheet, you need access to a computer with internet, then the report template, that's the sentence starters, then you need the final essay sheet. For the diorama, you need a shoebox, and scissors, crayons, markers, paint, glue, construction paper, other random art supplies, and then a bubble map for the final presentation. To begin this lesson, I started with just reading an informational book about any animal that I chose. And that got them just thinking about animals. We discussed the facts about this animal. It was giraffes, because that's my favorite animal, and I knew that giraffes didn't live in Georgia, so it didn't give away any facts. So then we made a list. I didn't give them, but we made a list of animals that live in Georgia based on what we had learned in second grade. And they were shown examples of past projects of dioramas. So from there, they got to think about which one they wanted to do, and they finally got to pick one and moved on to using PebbleGo first. They used PebbleGo and went through each tab, which include the habitat, the body, the food, fun facts, etc. And they filled out their graphic organizer. Whatever they couldn't find, for example, some of them couldn't find the lifespan, how heavy they get, how big they get. We had to go in to the Google search and type in how big can a dolphin get, how much can a dolphin weigh, and then we filled in the graphic organizer. From there, we went and designed the background setting in our dioramas. So we started with the habitat. One created an ocean, while the other, for the dolphin, the other one created land and a little river / pond for his river otter. We used construction paper, plenty of materials that I just had in my room. All right, after creating the background of the habitat in the diorama, we went back to the graphic organizer and filled in the research sheet that had the sentence starters. So they started organizing their information. So they had a whole bunch of facts. Now we're going to get it in order that makes sense. Once they did that, we went back to our diorama. So just kind of get their minds off writing, back to working, back to writing, to keep them engaged, because too much writing can bore them. Then they went back to their diorama, created their animal, created some of its predators, some of its food, and more of its habitat, whether it needed a dam, because river otters, you share dams with beavers, or sharks, so that shows the predators. That's what they moved on to working on. Once they completed that, we came back as a group and completed our final reports by using our sentence starters and creating extra sentences around that for the information that the sentence starters didn't allow us to use. So the report was actually longer than the template with the sentence starters. Once we were fully complete, each student took turns presenting their project and filling out their bubble map. I think this overall was so far their most enjoyable project. I've done a science experiment and a history, reading, writing, and Google Slides presentation. But this one, just because it included art, really caught their attention. And they got through the writing without any hesitation, without any struggle, without being bored, which is kind of what I see sometimes if they're struggling. But they really enjoyed this project. It was a lot of fun to do. It took approximately 5 hours to complete from beginning to end. They took them home today, and as soon as they jumped in the car, they were telling their mom facts that they had learned, which showed how engaged they were and how excited they were about the project. So this is something that I did when I was younger in 5th grade, but it worked very much for 2nd and 3rd graders. It just wasn't as detailed. They did kind of throw in a few funny things like streamers and light bulbs into their projects, but it was their project and their chance to express what they know, and it turned out wonderful. So I hope someone can use it one day. Thanks.